Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Oscar prediction update. It has been a while since we've done one of these. It is now mid May, and I've had quite a lot to think about. You'll notice that these haven't changed too drastically, but some things have changed. Usually, when I do my year in advance predictions, I try my absolute hardest to not look at what everyone else is saying. And now I have looked at what everyone else is saying. And that has kind of influenced me a little bit, but I try not to go for things just because everyone else is going for them, particularly in the early stages, because there are all sorts of movies that people think are going to contend and don't. And sometimes I'm right to not specifically go after something, but then other times I'm wrong. Uh, Something like Armageddon Time or Bardo, like I didn't think that those would be contenders and I was right. But something like West Side Story the previous year, I'm like, they're not going to go for a remake, but they did. Uh, Now, I will say, I feel like my predictions are actually lining up really closely with the general consensus, but there is one movie that I was actually surprised by how often it was popping up on other people's early Oscar predictions, and that is Saltburn. So, Saltburn is the follow up feature of Emerald Fennell, who did Promising Young Woman. And the film is starring Barry Keoghan, Carey Mulligan, Rosamund Pike, Richard E. Grant. So, a pretty big cast. Apparently, it's a thriller. And I understand why people are predicting it because it is Emerald Fennell. But as it happens, I did know about this film when I did my year in advance predictions, and I decided not to include it. And part of that is what just happened with The Sun, that sometimes a sophomore slump is really slumpy, and you don't always know if it's going to hit for the Academy in the same way that the first one did. But more importantly than that, Emerald Fennell, you know what she's been up to recently? She wrote the book for Andrew Lloyd Webber's aptly named Bad Cinderella, a show that has been heavily criticized mainly due to the book and has become one of the biggest Broadway failures since Spider Man Turn Off the Dark. So, because of that, I don't have a ton of faith in Emerald Fennell's next project. And it is a shame because I was a big Promising Young Woman defender, but I I don't know. I just don't think it's going to hit with the Academy in the same way, and I could be wrong. But so yeah, let's just get started. Going into our first category, which is a best documentary feature, which I did not predict. And I got to be totally honest. It's really hard to call documentary because I don't really know a lot of these. I'm actually pulling most of these titles from Sundance. And to be fair, last year, 4 of the 5 nominees came from Sundance. So I think that's probably a good place to start. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about them. I just know these are some of the buzziest titles to come out of Sundance. And last year, I got 0 out of 5, and none of the top 10 even got nominated. So, I mean, if at least one of these gets nominated at the end of the day, I'll be a very happy person. But I don't have too much commentary to say about that. Now, for Best International Feature, I have a little bit more to say, but not that much. Yeah, The Eternal Memory is that maybe it could be the documentary slash international feature that gets on. Monster is from the person that did Broker, that we were hoping could break out last year and didn't. The Zone of Interest is from Jonathan Glazer, who did Under the Skin, and is a really interesting person to watch out for. La Chimera, from what I've heard, is sort of the international contender to watch out for this year. It's really tough because you sort of have to assume that there's going to be one non-English language film that gets into Best Picture and is really loved because that's how it's worked for the past couple of years. And so I'm sort of banking on La Chimera, but I don't have a ton of stuff to back that up with. Uh, how Do You Live? I'm surprised how many people are predicting that to win because an animated film has never won in this category before. I'm predicting it to be nominated, which is a big deal because it would be the first animated film that's not a documentary to be nominated in this category. But I think people are perhaps a little bit too I don't know. People really think that this is going to happen, and I don't know. After Pinocchio last year, I've learned to not put too much stock into animated movies succeeding, which actually segues perfectly into the next category of best animated feature. Now, you might think it's weird that I still have Wish at number one and then Elemental at number two. How Do You Live is all the way down at three. Again, I don't know. It's weird because Miyazaki has never, no Studio Ghibli film has ever gotten nominated outside of animated feature, and I'm sure this is going to be great. But like, let's not count our chickens too quickly here. Wish I actually think has the potential to be something truly special. It's sort of an anniversary film for Disney that's like the culmination of everything they've done. And Elemental, the fact that that's going to be premiering at Cannes indicates that it might be better than some of the trailers have been indicating. I will admit, it feels weird to not have Chicken Run in the top five, considering how much they love Aardman. But uh, I think the story behind Nimona is just, it's such a juicy narrative, the way that movie was almost canceled and then resurrected at the last minute. And I really think if the movie is halfway decent, they can really use that narrative to get it the nomination. Don't really have much to say about the rest of the contenders. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mario, they just don't usually go for the super popular name brands, pre existing IPs. I know Mario's making so much money, but I don't know. Like Illumination, they only ever got on once for Despicable Me 2, so I don't think it's gonna happen. Best sound. Okay, so I have moved Dune Part 2 up. And Dune Part 2, there was a trailer released recently, so we got an extra look at that. And I'm really torn. I think it's obviously going to be big, and it's obviously going to be great. But there is a question of, okay, the first one was such a big juggernaut. It won 6 below the line Oscars, and how many of those wins is it going to repeat? Because I think about what happened with Avatar: The Way of Water, where it was less embraced by the Academy. Like, yeah, this is great, but we've seen this. So I don't know. I have it at number one for now, and then Oppenheimer. We'll see what that does. Ooh, I've moved Color Purple up, and I don't want to talk about this right off the bat, but I think Color Purple has the potential to do very, very well. And so I have it at three for now because it's a musical, and those tend to do well in the sound categories. And Indiana Jones and Killers of the Flower Moon, I think, should still be solid contenders. Indiana Jones for sound, not for picture. I moved Maestro out of there because I don't think it's going to be that strong overall. But if the movie is really good, then keep an eye out for it here. And then there's some actiony stuff here that I don't know for sure if they're going to go for. And I know everybody loves John Wick Chapter 4, but there is a sense of, okay, how are Academy voters really going to be watching that movie if they haven't seen the previous 3 films? Uh, let's move on actually to Best Original Song. I have decided to put Color Purple at number 1 for now, even though we haven't heard any new songs from that. But I think the fact that that movie is more likely to get in Best Picture does give it a leg up in this category. But the fact that we've heard More for Us and Gonna Be You, I think those are definitely still getting nominated. Uh, okay, tell me this. Do people really think Peaches from Super Mario Brothers is gonna get on? Because, like, I've seen a lot of people, like, seriously predicting that. And I don't know, it feels like A, too short, and B, like, kind of a joke song. And I don't really know if it's but maybe it's just enough of a like YouTube meme sensation that it gets on nonetheless. I don't know. I'm curious to see what people think about that. For best original score, so I have Dune winning, which we don't know for sure, but it's a solid number one for now because we know it's going to be great. I think everything else is actually pretty much the same. I moved Indiana Jones in because we assume there's going to be just enough original music in that to qualify. If there is, it should get nominated. Uh, Now, there's a couple of new things that I have here. Carmen, I have that here, but nowhere else, because from what I understand, the music is such the highlight of that movie. and maybe there's enough goodwill to get it nominated. Elemental is Pixar, it's Thomas Newman, and like from what I understand, early test screenings are really singling out the music, and Thomas Newman is so overdue to win. But I really feel like the movie would need to be the front runner in animated feature in order for that to happen, and I don't know if that's the situation yet. And then Poor Things. So, as I was putting these predictions together, they released a teaser trailer for Poor Things, like a 30-second teaser, and it was just enough to give us a little look at the aesthetic of the film. And from those 30 seconds, I decided this is going to be a huge, huge contender across the board. I don't have it in for score, but you'll see I have it in a lot of other categories because the visual aesthetic of the film is just so intriguing to me. And maybe it doesn't happen, but I feel like stuff like cinematography, production design, like it's so big. It goes big or goes home, and it's not going to go home. Uh, that's basically all I have to say. Expect Poor Things to do well throughout the rest of my predictions. And then Challengers and The Killer, I don't have a ton of faith in overall. That's the tricky thing with this year I'm finding is that it feels like there's so many like heavy hitters that I'm just predicting to get nominated all across the board, and I'm sort of neglecting a lot of the smaller movies that aren't doing as well but still could. Like there's some movies, Dune, Oppenheimer, Killed to the Flower Moon, Barbie, those feel like slam dunks, and you'll see those four movie titles being repeated a lot alongside Color Purple in a lot of different categories. And so figuring out what other contenders there might be, the ones that are maybe more hit or miss, maybe they could be big or maybe they couldn't. It's tricky. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Maybe not. I'm going to move on to visual effects now. So I have Dune Part 2 winning, obviously. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I don't think it's going to win, but I think it's definitely going to be nominated. I think there's enough strong work on that film, and the first two got on, that it's fair to expect it to make the top 5. Indiana Jones, good. Barbie, I feel like we don't know how much visual effects are going to be in the film, but if they try to do any sort of like, I don't know, shrinking with the doll stuff or anything, I feel like there's enough high concept, interesting stuff in the idea. Plus, the movie is clearly going to be very well loved. And then I have Spaceman at number 5. Now, some of you might be wondering why I moved Oppenheimer out, and from what I understand, the movie does not have a big visual effects budget. I think like there's a very small VFX team, kind of like with Everything Everywhere, and like the only real effect is the explosion, which is at the end of the movie, and most of the movie is not VFX based. Now, Poor Things, from what we saw in the trailer, could also have some strong VFX, and I'm thinking that some of these other contenders, like Mission Impossible, John Wick, Little Mermaid, I wouldn't rule any of them out, but I don't know. But I feel like every year when we do year in advance predictions, visual effects is always like the trickiest one, or what at least one of the trickiest ones, because we have so many big tentpole blockbusters, but also some smaller indie art house stuff that use the visual effects in an interesting way. And we don't know exactly what the Oscars are going to do with that. Moving on to Best Makeup and Hairstyling. So I still have Maestro at number 1, even though I really don't know how well the movie's going to do overall. Barbie is there, Dune is there, Poor Things is there. I moved that up because I think that's going to have some really interesting makeup. And then A Different Man. So this is an A24 film starring Sebastian Stan. Yes, that is Sebastian Stan in that photo. And I don't know anything about this movie. I don't know if it's more horror or like gory. I don't know if it's really going to be the Academy's cup of tea. But I don't know if voters will really need to see the movie. I think just show them that picture and they go, okay, slot it in for Best Makeup. So I have that in there for now. And then, I feel weird about Color Purple not being there, but that might be more of a hairstyling contender. Yeah. Book of Clarence, I will say. I feel bad about Book of Clarence because I think that could be big. That has the potential to be really big. And yet it's not a sure thing, and it keeps getting taken out of these technical categories for these movies that feel like they're more readily going to be sure things. So I'm keeping my eye on Book of Clarence, but I'm not really predicting it to be the big contender that I once was. For Best Costume Design, Barbie is the clear frontrunner here, but I think Color Purple could also be a big contender. Poor Things, from that brief trailer, I think is going to have some interesting costumes. Wonka makes total sense as a costume design nominee that gets this nomination and nothing else. I mean, the Tim Burton Wonka got in here. And then Dune Part 2, to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't be shocked if this is the one tech category that Dune Part 2 doesn't repeat, because it didn't win this at the Oscar, and I wonder how much of the costumes are just going to be repeats from the first film. But as of right now, I still have it getting on tentatively. And then Firebrand is about Catherine Parr and Henry VIII, so there's going to be some interesting costumes on display. But yeah, I really don't know. Again, I apologize if I'm moving a bit too fast. That always happens around the middle of this category. Production design. Now, production design is interesting because I feel like we might have a really solid top five, and I don't know how much this is gonna change. Barbie, obviously. Dune Part 2, obviously. Poor Things, if you saw the trailer, it's probably gonna get in. Color Purple, from what I've heard, is like visually spectacular, and it's a musical, it's got all these big sets, so that makes sense. And then Oppenheimer makes a lot of sense too, because apparently they actually built like a village explicitly just to get demolished. So that to me says production design nomination, and yeah, Kills the Flower Moon could still contend, but like I don't know what else can really happen. So yeah, I feel pretty good about this top five. Oh, sorry, yawning because this is so predictable. Ooh. Now, in the category of Best Cinematography, I have made the decision to move The Color Purple up to the number one position. And my justification for this is that apparently at CinemaCon they played the trailer, and there was a lot of talk about the movie looking visually stunning and beautiful. Now, I have to be honest, part of this is also because I think the movie is going to do very well above the line, but I'll save that for later. And I just wanted some below the line win to justify that, what I'm going to do later. Now, I'm probably playing my hand a bit too much there, but yeah, Oppenheimer I think should be on, Dune should be on, and yeah, the top five does make sense. Like I said earlier, I do feel bad about the Book of Clarence. I'm sort of like giving that movie the short shaft because I'm basically predicting the same like handful of movies to get nominated over and over and over again, and it feels weird. But you know what? Sometimes that's just what happens. And in the category of best film editing, huh. Okay, I still don't know entirely how to feel about this category. And I still have Killers of the Flower Moon at number one, which is probably not a great idea because of the length of that movie, but I think it's gonna be nominated. And like, it's tricky. I don't want to say anything else because I don't know anything else. Like, I mean, these are movies that we haven't seen except for Air, and oh, I guess this is probably as good a time as any to talk about that one. I did see Air, and it's not bad, but it's not great either. And I would be surprised. You know what? I actually am predicting this movie to do decently well, and maybe that's just out of an abundance of caution. But, like, realistically, this is an April release, and I know that Everything Everywhere was a March release, but Everything Everywhere was not a forgettable movie. That movie stays in your memory. Air, I'd be surprised if people are still talking about that movie at the end of the year. And yet, I'm still predicting it to do very well, mostly because we don't know what the other contenders are going to be. And this might be a very good year, or this might be a very weak year. We just don't know. And I got a feeling that they're going to campaign Air a lot. Try to, hey, remember this movie? Let's get this back to the public conscious. But moving on to the above the line categories, starting with adapted screenplay, I still have Killers of the Flower Moon for now, and I have Poor Things in third place, and like this hasn't really changed all that much. I still think Dune Part 2 could potentially get left off, but could potentially be on. It's tricky, and I think most of the big contenders for Best Picture are in this category as opposed to original. Now I have Color Purple missing this top five because traditionally musicals don't get nominated here. But uh, I guess it could. I'm not going to write it out, but if it did make the top five, then we'd know it was a top contender for winning picture. Um, yeah, and I don't have too much else to say about that. Original screenplay, ooh. So this is where I had to get a little bit creative, and these are a lot of these movies just have not really shown up prior to this. This is actually the one nomination I still have Book of Clarence in getting, but maybe even that is a little bit presumptuous. You know what? I actually feel really good about Past Lives in the number one position because a lot of the other Best Picture contenders are just not in this category. So, yeah, Past Lives, everybody really likes that one. Why not? Let's see. And then Air, which I think is safe for screenplay. I and based on what we're seeing so far and how screenplay could potentially be very weak. And then challengers is Guadagnino, and La Chimera is that uh, foreign language entry that usually makes it into picture and screenplay. Not to show my hand too early. Again, it's hard the way I organize these videos. Um, Moving on to supporting actor. I still have Plemons in the number one position, which does feel a little bit weird because I know that that role is going to be subdued, and yet I also know it's going to be a ton of screen time. Like, it might break the new record for most screen time for a supporting performance. Gosling, part of me does question if he's really supporting because a lot of the marketing is playing him up equal to Margot Robbie. Um, but I have been supporting for now, and there's a lot of good word about that performance. And then De Niro, Defoe is interesting because I feel like every single year people are trying to make the case for Willem Dafoe as a frontrunner in whatever movie he's in. And this one, I think the movie's going to be big and he's playing a mad scientist character. And I really, really hope, because he's definitely overdue for an Oscar, but I think I have him in for a nomination right now and we'll see what happens. And John Magro is just, I think they're really going to like that movie. So I have him in. And then everyone else I just don't know about. I'm sorry if it feels I'm the day I'm recording this, I'm kind of tired and I don't maybe have as much insightful commentary as I normally would. Uh, Mark Ruffalo might have a bigger role than Defoe. We don't know. Corey Hawkins, that role I think traditionally is good on stage, but not as big as the female roles. And then Brian Tyree Henry just got nominated and he's playing a boxing coach, so maybe. Now, in the category of Best Supporting Actress, I still have Lily Gladstone in number one. Uh, from what I've heard, this is a very, very showy role. But Taraji P. Henson and Danielle Brooks, okay, this is interesting. I think both of them are going to get nominated. From what I understand, both roles have historically done very well. And I think it may depend on the film and the interpretation of the film, which one has the more showy part. But I think it's safest for now to predict both of them to get on. And then Julianne Moore in May December. Initially, I thought that Moore was going to be the lead and Portman was supporting, but now I realize that it's the opposite. So I've switched them. And then Viola Davis for Air. Now, I don't know how well Air is going to do, but I actually feel pretty confident that Davis is at least going to be in the conversation for a nomination. She gives a very striking standout performance, and the fact that she came so close to being nominated last year for The Woman King, and she got on at every single precursor and then missed the Oscar, I think there's a really good campaign for Davis, and I think that's already been started. So yeah, I can totally see Davis getting nominated at the end of the year. Now, everyone else I've kind of moved out. I think I have less faith in Nyad overall, and Emily Blunt is suspiciously absent from the trailers for Oppenheimer. Uh, I will say Patti LuPone has some very strong notices about her performance in Beau is Afraid. However, that movie, from everything I've heard, is not exactly the Academy's cup of tea. Moving on to Best Actor in a Leading Role. Uh, I still have Cooper at number one, but that's mainly because I don't really know who else to put there. I want Cooper to win, but I've sort of lost faith in the film overall, and I'm starting to wonder if this could be another Eyes of Tammy Faye, The Whale, The Iron Lady, wins the double combo of actor, leading performance, and makeup, but doesn't get nominated for picture. I'm starting to wonder if it can go in that category because it does feel like a lot of movies are going in that direction nowadays. Um, but Killian Murphy is going to have a very, very showy performance in Oppenheimer. Uh, Domingo, I'm not sure how well that movie's going to do overall, but he should get a standout performance in it. DiCaprio, obviously, and then there's a lot of guys fending for that fifth slot, but at the moment I've got Tier U in Past Lives because I think the film is going to do very well. Uh, Keep an eye on Mescal, Sandler, and Benedier, though. I do find it kind of funny that Kingsley Benedier, who has previously played Barack Obama and Malcolm X, is now playing Bob Marley. Like, is he trying to play every famous black man who ever lived? Is he, like, crossing off a bingo of this one? Like, I don't know. I just find it kind of funny. And now, Best Actress in a Leading Role. And this is so stacked of a category. Honestly, 6 through 10 could make a good lineup here, but I'm going to stick with the top 5. Fantasia, I don't know for sure if she's going to win, but I think if I'm expecting the film to do well, I kind of have to put her in the number 1 spot for now because that role is so incredibly baity. And then Emma Stone and Margot Robbie, I think, are both going to contend for these very quirky comedic performances. Greta Lee, I think, is definitely going to get on because of the strength of her film. And then Saoirse Ronan, it's a shame that I don't have her up higher, but like I don't know how well Foe is going to do, and that's what I'm kind of hoping it's going to do well. And all the others, I just don't know how well the movie is going to be received. Like maybe that could be a thing, maybe that could be a thing. I just don't know. Annette Bening was my winner last time, and because of the overdue factor, and now I've taken her out because a lot of people just don't seem to have much support in the film overall. And it could very easily be a This Had Oscar Buzz type movie where it just peters out. I hope not. I want it to do well. I want Benning to finally get that Oscar, but uh, it's it's really hard to figure out what's gonna happen here. And I think I don't know. As of right now, I feel pretty confident with this top 5, but I just don't know. And now we come to the category of Best Director. Now, I will justify my number 1 placement in a minute here, but first I just want to say this is an incredibly competitive category, and Villeneuve is definitely making it on, and Scorsese, I'm pretty certain, is making it on. Gerwig and Song feel like strong bets too, but that means I have to leave out Lanthimos and Nolan, which feels wrong. Like, I don't want to leave them out, but it's just like, I so Lanthimos and Nolan are just really, really close, and the other 3 I think are all reasonably in the conversation. I okay. In order to properly justify why I have the number 1 that I have here, I just need to skip straight to Best Picture. So sorry if that was a little fast. You can go back and pause it. But okay. So I was trying to figure out what I should have at number 1 for Best Picture. And Killers of the Flower Moon, I had number 1 last time. But the fact that that movie we found out is going to be 4 hours long, I think is kind of a deal breaker when it comes to actually winning. I think it could still happen, but like, I don't know. I was looking at everything else, and there's a lot of things that I think make a case for being a Best Picture contender, but I don't think I see why this stuff would get nominated, but I can't make a case for it winning. And then I saw the Oscar expert video, and they had Color Purple in the number one spot, and they basically admitted that they really only had it as a placeholder because they didn't know what else to put. But it did get me thinking. And the more I started thinking, the more I felt, you know what? Maybe it's not impossible. Maybe I can actually see it happening. For one thing, the director of the movie, Bazuele, is someone who has not directed a Best Picture nominee previously, which means that the streak continues. But second, it is a more traditional Oscar bait type movie. I did say last time, after Everything Everywhere, whatever wins Best Picture this year is going to be something a little bit simpler, a little bit more conservative Oscar bait, because the pendulum is going to swing in the other direction and they're not going to go with something wild and crazy again. So Color Purple is both a new director but also more traditional, safer pick. On top of that, it's based on a musical, and I think from what I know about the source material, it's very emotional and very stirring, and it's going to have a lot of people talking. Uh, and I was hesitant because I know it's not technically a remake, it's just another adaptation of the source material, but a lot of people are going to consider it a remake the same way they did for West Side Story and All Quiet. But the thing that I think makes Color Purple different than those two is the original Color Purple movie did not win Best Picture. And that was sort of seen as a snub, the fact that it was nominated for 13 Oscars and didn't win a single one. And this, in a weird way, can kind of be seen as rewriting history by we have another chance to reward the Color Purple. Kind of in the same way that, like, Renee Zellweger, when she won for Judy, it was a sense of, oh, the real Judy Garland never won an Oscar, so this is like correcting a wrong. And it's weird logic, but if it's what the Academy believes, then it's what the Academy believes. Plus, from early test footage of that trailer at CinemaCon, we know that the film is going to be visually stunning. And if this has what it takes to win Best Picture, does that mean it could also potentially win Director, which in many ways would be the bigger victory? The fact that we have never had a black person win Best Director after 95 years of the Oscars is just insane. And maybe this is finally the time it can happen. So, beyond that, looking at the rest of the nominees, I think Past Lives makes sense. I almost went with it as the Best Picture winner because it's the one that people have actually seen and people are very passionate about. And then Dune Part 2, I don't think is impossible either if it's such a big hit and people are in a Return of the King sense, hey, let's give it to this one. Barbie, I don't know. I think Barbie is definitely going to get talked about, but is it going to be okay? I kind of want to retire the phrase "too weird for the Academy" after Everything Everywhere won, but I think 2 years in a row they won't want to go with it. Plus, I think the film is going to lean a little bit into politics and it's going to be very feminist, and I think there's going to be people calling it woke, and like I think there's also going to be some very, very strong defenders of the movie. But again, after Everything Everywhere, in terms of a winner, I think we want to go with the general crowd pleaser. Uh, so it's difficult. Now for the rest of the nominees, I have Poor Things, Oppenheimer, Foe, still holding out hope for that one. Air, it feels weird to have Air at number 9, but I'm like, you know what? People like it. Maybe it can stay on at the end of the year. I don't feel super confident about it, but I feel like I have to keep it in the conversation for now. And then La Chimera is just, well, it's my number 1 prediction for international feature, so I guess I just have to have it in for Best Picture too. But we don't know how far it's going to actually go. And then everything else, the reason I don't have Book of Clarence in the top 10 anymore is because I'm only predicting to actually get on for screenplay. And I think that it could be a big deal, but some of these other bigger contenders would have to fall in order for it to get significant nominations in the below the line categories. And then, yeah, I don't have much to say about everything else. I already explained why I'm not super confident in Saltburn. What's the other one? The Holdovers. People are like really confident that The Holdovers is going to do well. I only have it as an honorable mention in screenplay because Alexander Payne, I know he was an Academy darling a long time ago, but like I really hated downsizing, and I just don't want to acknowledge that he might be back in the Oscar race. So I'd prefer to think that's not going to happen. Uh, so with that said, I think that's everything I wanted to say. Oh, one thing I will say, the name of my YouTube channel, for a long time it was Conman1226. And way back when I had a physical blog, not physical, but when I had a blog on WordPress, I called the blog Conman at the Movies. And I liked that name quite a lot, but I think in more recent years, I don't know. My name is Connor, and I guess I always kind of thought Con Man was like a cool nickname to have, but I think I'm starting to realize that maybe some people can definitely take that username the wrong way, and it can like give a wrong impression. I don't know. There's no ulterior meaning of it, but just to be safe, I have temporarily, maybe permanently. I'm curious to see what you think of the new name, but I've changed it to Connor at the Oscars. I'm not super pleased with it. Maybe I'll change it to something else in the future. Let me know. I'm curious to see what you think of that in the future. And also, what do you think of my Oscar predictions? What do you think I'm leaving out? What do you think I'm overconfident in? Let me know, and I will see you guys later.